Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of Termite's Buzz, episode number 17, the week of May 8th. Thank you for joining me again. I am your host, Termite, and you can find all of my comings and goings over at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. There's a link tree there with links to all of my social media platforms and audio feeds for all of your content consumption. I am one of two hosts of a video game podcast known as 80-Bit Pod Smash, and all of the shows that we have been doing are on that website, as well as the RSS feed that I've just told you about. So go over and check out 80bitpodsmash.com for all of those. 80-Bit Pod Smash has taken a hiatus that we owe everyone an update for. But in lieu of actual 80-Bit Pod Smash episodes, you're stuck with me, Termite. So thanks for joining me again. Lots going on this week. I am absolutely exhausted. I had a crazy weekend, starting back with May the 4th be with you. Our neighborhood had a big giant potluck, not for the event. The potluck was scheduled. That was going to happen regardless. But what we did to zhuzh it up for Star Wars was do a neighborhood viewing of Empire Strikes Back. So there's a little extra setup, TV, chairs, trying to wrangle the kids to sit and watch a movie while they ate their dinner. It was a little fun, a little hectic, but fun nonetheless. And then Friday I had a Cinco de Mayo cookout, which was kind of a nod to Cinco de Cuatro from Arrested Development, because I did a burgers and hot dogs cookout, and I know that has like absolutely nothing to do with Arrested Development, because Cinco de Cuatro was the Bluth family's effort to drain the stores of all of the supplies of Latin American food so that Latin Americans could not take off work because they couldn't have their Cinco de Mayo celebration, which is ridiculous and crazy. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the show is just, that's part of the show. Hilarious. So we had a huge cookout. I grilled burgers and dogs with the help of one neighbor. And that was a very draining experience, but it was very fulfilling and I loved it. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world, is have huge cookouts, fill up my yard full of people and cook for them and serve drinks. We had Coronas with lime and we had margaritas, hamburgers, hot dogs, and then people just brought like all the fixins and things that you would need. That went off without a hitch. And then my wife was gone for the weekend, and so Saturday and Sunday were filled with entertaining the children. It was actually comic book day on May 6th, so I wanted to take my kids out to the comic book store, our local one here in Charlottesville, called Hello Comics. So go check them out. There's two locations, one in Uptown and one at the Downtown Mall. You can look all that up. Hello Comics is their name. So we went, and I went specifically for two reasons. One was there was a collaboration with PlayStation and the writers, Christos Gage, who is one of the writers of Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation, and artist Ig Guara. To celebrate Free Comic Book Day, you could get a comic, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and it's a prequel to the new Spider-Man game, so it kind of fills the gap between the two. So I needed to have this comic, and I'm going to read this little blurb from the PlayStation blog, and this was written by John Paquette, the narrative director at Insomniac Games. In this story, so in the free comic book, their lives collide as Peter, Miles, and MJ attempt to balance their responsibilities to the city and each other. They keep coming back to one of the main themes of the comic: is magic real? Because in this action-packed issue, a beloved supervillain makes their first appearance in our universe and appears to have supernatural abilities that defy mere webs and fists. None other than the Hood. So, I picked that up. That was the main reason for me to go. It was absolutely fun and cool, but there was a line out the front door, and it was hectic, and there was a whole bunch of free comics to pick up, limit 5 per person. So I got 5 for me, and my son had 3. But I had my little kid with me, and if you've ever been anywhere with a 3-year-old, it's you don't pay attention to anything, and everything is distracting, and there's overstimulation everywhere as you're trying to focus on what to do, where to go, where's the line forming, how to respect other people's space, how to keep your toddler distracted and not tearing everything up and ripping into things. So it was wild. I walked out with 8 comics because 5 for me, being the Spider-Man 2 comic, and some other ones. And my son, I didn't have time to pick out the 10, so I had him grab one, and then I just filled out a couple others. So overall, super, super fun, but yet another draining event. Oh, and the other thing I went there for was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, The Lost Years episode or issue 3 had come out, and I have I'm on a recurring. They let me know when the next one comes out, so they email me and then they hold one for me. So this is the third issue. I haven't even read the second one yet, but that is a prequel series of comics to the Lost Ronin series, which is a post way in the future Ninja Turtle comic written by the original folks that wrote the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Peter Eastman and someone else whose name escapes me at the moment. I said, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. So that was Saturday, and then today was the little bit of yard work and cleanup I had to do from that cookout. I had to put my grill back, and I had to mow my grass, and then I ran into some chores and tried to relax, but I was alone with the kids, so it was a little crazy on this day. So here I come with, I haven't really relaxed since Wednesday, and that was still a work day, so relaxation was very limited. So I'm exhausted, and I haven't really had a lot of time to sink into this episode of Termite's Buzz, which is why I'm 6 minutes in and just talking about my life and the craziness that's going on. This week also, the week of May 8th, is the week of Tears of the Kingdom. We're getting a whole brand new Zelda game coming out this Friday. It comes out in 4 days or so after you listen to this podcast. It goes live Monday, May 8th, and the game comes out Friday, May 12th. The review embargo will likely drop on Wednesday sometime, likely. Lots of things are happening, lots of promo videos. There's a story recap on Nintendo's website, so I'm extremely excited. I cannot wait. I'm trying not to work at all on Friday. I will use vacation hours the moment I can get my game. I pre-order now for physical pickup at my local Best Buy, and they don't open until 10 a.m. But I do that because I'm so tired of worrying about mail and whether I'm going to get the game on time. Is it going to show up in the condition I want? Is it even going to show up at all? Is it going to get lost in the mail? One, will the retailer do it correctly? Two, will the mail carrier do it correctly? And three, where will it be? Could it get snatched off my porch, off the truck, like the other third party that's not really related to the other two? So it's just, there's too many variables. So whenever I want a video game, I have been pre-ordering them from Best Buy. I don't pre-order very many games, so when I do it, I want to make sure I know where it's going to be and what time so I can plan for it. Again, I've got 2 kids and a full-time job and a marriage, so I want to make sure I can plan out way ahead of time when and where my games will be and when and how I consume them. And I know I have some retailer rewards through GameStop. I have some points. So for Diablo 4, I think I'm going to try to pre-order that at GameStop so I can get it either at midnight the night before it comes out on June 6th, or I can go down there on Tuesday afternoon and grab it, my copy. So that's a different story. So anyway, this is the week of Zelda. Folks, we're getting a new Zelda. It's awesome. Zelda, The Legend of Zelda is my single favorite video game franchise of all time. I own every single Zelda mainline title and handheld spin-offs, pretty much all of them except for the CDI games. If there is a Zelda game that's not on CDI, I own it for the console with which it was released for initially. Those are actual copies of Zeldas for the primary console. So Nintendo, Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, the Nintendo DS, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, all of them. Including the multiples. So I've got Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, and I've got Link's Awakening DX on the Game Boy Color, and then I have Link's Awakening Remake on the Switch. I have Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, and I have Breath of the Wild on the Switch. I have Twilight Princess on the GameCube, and I have Twilight Princess on the Wii. So I'm a fanatic. That's, I'm a fan. Zelda's my thing. So of course I'm getting it on launch day, and I will be all about it next week on the show when I talk about my impressions and my playthroughs and what my experience is. I did just get the Nintendo Switch Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom OLED model special edition, and I've been using it because it's awesome. I am blown away by the OLED screen. It is absolutely crisp and perfect and awesome, and I'll get into what I'm playing in just a minute. But I want to talk about this other little thing that's also happening this week. If you don't care about Zelda or you don't want to spend any money, you can play Diablo 4 for free again. They're having a Server Slam event, PC, PlayStation, Xbox, where you can go play a game again. You can start over, so everything that was in the previous beta is gone. Start a new character, get to level 20 again. There's something you can unlock. Progress will be wiped once more before the main game comes out, but it is a chance to see what updates have happened since the last beta, as well as stress their servers, because it's called a Server Slam, so I guess that's a fancy new PR word for stress test, server stress test or whatever. So if you're not playing Zelda, you can do that. I'm playing Zelda. So sorry, friends. I'm not playing Diablo 4 again. All the progress is going to be lost. There's no point. I will play it when it comes out in June. I will see everyone in June after playing nothing but Zelda for a while. So Termite's Buzz is usually broken into 3 parts, the first of which I hadn't even gotten to yet, and that is what I'm currently playing and what trophies I'm after. And then there's some video game industry news to talk through, and then I usually end the show with a retro discussion about something retro gamey, because I have a huge collection of retro games, and I'm super into not cataloging, but like kind of having a video game museum light, if you will, with over 1,000 titles in my collection of all kinds of consoles. I love to be able to pick through games that I'm feeling and like play things, as well as shop for and acquire new stuff from my collection. Ooh, I'm burpy. All right. So what am I playing? What trophies am I into? Well, I was playing for Horizon Forbidden West DLC Burning Shores, and I did finish the mainline story. I think I talked about that last week. Shelved that because I have been playing Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And pretty much that's all my gaming has been with my PlayStation 5 since it came out last Friday. It's awesome. The story is fantastic. The platforming is cool. I am so bummed out by the performance bugs. They had one patch since it came out. So, of course, if you've been hearing that, that's pretty much what's going to make headlines is, oh, it's buggy, it's not great. No, listen to the reviews. The reviews are as good as they are for a reason. It's a solid game. It just has some weird, like, screen tearing and frame drops. So if you're really, really sensitive to that, you can wait and get it on sale when they patch all this stuff out, or play it, because it's great. And I won't spoil anything. It's still too new for me to get into anything about like actual plot lines or themes and stuff that I'm digging. So I'll just talk about like the graphics are top notch, animation quality is awesome, combat's solid, although I'm playing it on easy, so like I'm not really super into the intricacies of the different stances, switching between stances and trying to min-max my abilities and memorize all the different force abilities in addition to the lightsaber throwing and all the blocks and parries and such. I don't care about any of that. Just give me the lightsaber and let me thwack people and throw people off a cliff with the force and have a blast. That's what I'm doing. It's great. Coming off of like Hogwarts, which was drab and kind of boring for me and not really fun, even though I was playing that on easy as well. Star Wars is infinitely more fun and more engaging. I like to explore. I like the different planets and biomes. And of course, the story is top notch. So I really love that world. I love what Cal Kestis is, or what Star Wars is doing with Cal Kestis' plotline. I have the book, Battle Scars, that takes place between Fallen Order and Survivor. I've read that. So I'm really in. I'm loving it, and I haven't finished it yet, but that's also the Platinum Trophy that I'm going to go for. So I'm following a trophy guide. Step 1 is to beat the story, because you unlock abilities in Metroidvania style, where you go back to other planets with new abilities to get to different new stuff. So it's pointless to try and 100% it on the first time through. So I'm just playing the story, which is kind of cool, because nothing's missable, which is nice. And I'm not even going to do like combat trophies or anything like that. I'm just going to wait until I finish the story, and then I'll go back through and knock out everything else. Apparently it's like a 40 to 50 hour platinum, and I'm likely 20 or so hours into the game, so I'm getting pretty close to the end of the campaign, and some big stuff goes down. It's great. Love it. Jedi Fallen Order, or sequel, Jedi Survivor. Go get it. If you are at all interested, it's totally worth your time. Just be mindful of the frame drops and the screen tearing if you care. I did finish Metroid Prime. As I said earlier, I was playing on my new Switch, the OLED model, and how crisp and amazing, and it's a game changer. I feel like I have a new Switch Pro, even though it doesn't run any better and it doesn't actually do anything in a higher resolution. It just looks so much crisper and so better, so much more vibrant, and the contrast is the dark blacks and the popping colors and the crisp edges. Just it's awesome. So I finally was motivated enough to finish Metroid Prime, and wow, the game holds up, right? It's how old now? It's 22 years old. 2001, 2002-ish. So it's 20 years old, and it was a 10 out of 10 back then. Today, I would probably drop it to like a 9 out of 10 because of some quality of life stuff that we've just aged past as an industry, such as the backtracking is crazy, and it's enemies respawn, and the platforming isn't as good as modern platforming is, but it's not cumbersome. It's just annoying. So that was kind of weird. the fight, or the last like area leading up to the last boss, you have this big platforming area, and there are these Metroids that spawn infinitely, and they take a lot of bullets to kill, and you have to use different types of weapons. And so switching between weapons is just like a huge delay. It's not fluid and snappy like modern games are. And the final boss requires you to switch your visor. So you have to change your visor, and that's also not super snappy. In fact, I completely died by the last boss because I was trying to like swap visors and change weapons while also fending off enemies and dodging attacks at the same time, and it just fried my brain. So it was just a lot going on. But anyway, back to the room with the Metroids. Leading up to the final boss, you have to like hop over these platforms. These Metroids grab you, and you can't move. They cover your entire screen, and you have to go into morph ball mode and use a bomb to get them off of you. But you're in the middle of platforming, and it's a huge room. So by the time you get to the top, one mistake, and a Metroid grabs you, and you're done. You fall all the way to the bottom, and you had to climb all the way back up. It was unnecessary to me. I think it was unnecessary padding to the time spent doing that. And then some of those enemies and bosses are very bullet spongy-y, and I feel like that's how they made the game longer. There's this giant quest at the end. It's the very last thing you do after you get all the upgrades, where you have to find 12 of the Chozo artifacts. I totally followed a guide for like the last 2/3 of the game and missed like 2 of them, and it was awful to figure out where they were in the middle of a walk, even with a guide. It's like, I know I'm missing this one, and I know it's here. How do I get there? And there's no cohesive way to look at the elevators across the different maps. So when you look at the map, you can see where your area is and how to trace out like to an elevator. But then it's like Talon Ruins North. You have to break out of your map, go into Talon's Ruins North, and try to keep straight and I don't do well with map navigation as it is, and having multiple maps with no like GPS line that shows you either where you've been or where you have to go. I mean, there's, like I said, modern game design has kind of mitigated all this stuff. Also, when you die, you go back to your last save point, and if you don't save, which are these spaced out rooms that are like, they take time, and usually they're out of your way, I have to constantly like go find a save room, which throws me off my navigation path. So I spend more time trying to figure out like, how do I get to the save room? Because if you die, you lose out all your progress. There's no checkpoints. There's no auto-saving. You have to go to a checkpoint and save it. And so that cost me like an hour's worth of gameplay once in this playthrough, because I was pushing through, and then like I fell into like lava, and I couldn't get out fast enough, or something stupid happened. And I lost a whole bunch of progress. And when you do things like, and you collect optional weapon upgrades, and you don't remember navigation areas, and so like I reloaded the save, and I know I didn't get everything that I got the first time, but I needed to move on. So those are kind of my complaints with Metroid Prime now, 20 years later. But wow, did that game hold up. I mean, it's so good in every other aspect. I mean, despite the clunkiness and changing the weapon types, the combat is still surprisingly good. The vibe, the music, the graphics, everything is great. Of course, it's a remaster, so the graphics have been refreshed. And it's just great. I love it. I absolutely love this game. Like I said, I'd give it a 9 out of 10 now. So if you are on the fence at all about getting Metroid Prime remastered for the Switch, I highly recommend it. And then this past weekend, in the middle of all the craziness I talked about earlier with the cookouts and the kids, it is Splatoon 3's Zelda-themed Splatfest, where the 3 teams are Courage, Wisdom, and Power, the Triforce. Of course, Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, respectively. I chose Team Courage, so I have been repping my team as often as I can on my Nintendo Switch. The new OLED Switch model has an amazing kickstand now that extends across the entire length of the Switch, instead of it being a literal bike kickstand that you like kick out of the side that falls over. So I found in the morning, I have an island in my kitchen. I can sit at the bar stool height chair with the Nintendo Switch sitting in front of me, propped open. The kickstand kicked out, of course, and then a Pro Controller. And that's how I've been playing while I listen up the stairs for the little one to wake up. I can be accessible to the children right in the middle of the kitchen, and comfortable playing on this amazing-looking OLED screen. So I've been doing that, and Splatoon 3 is hard. It's just turf war for Splatfest, and it's all I've been doing is playing Team Courage. And I think I'm at 24 wins and 25 losses, so I'm not amazing. But, you know, I'm trying to throw in my wins for Team Courage. In fact, it ends in just a few minutes as I'm recording this show, and the results will come out probably tomorrow or the day the show podcast goes live. So if Team Courage wins, I'll be happy. Otherwise, I'll be kind of bummed that my time was not wasted. I had a good time. I love Splatfests. I don't play in all of them, but this one was a Zelda-themed one, and I felt the urge to get back into it. Of course, I had the OLED screen and trying to play my Switch more. So that was cool. That kind of took up what I'm playing. Wow. We are rolling right along. I say wow at the time. I'm not trying to rush, but I do want to keep the show. I want to respect audience's time. 45 minutes to an hour. I think an hour is too long for a solo show. So 20 minutes in, I hadn't even got to the news yet. So some of these news stories are kind of short, but there's one big meaty one that I will want to sit with. So what's been going on in the gaming industry? Well, the Super Mario Brothers movie officially hits the $1 billion grossing mark globally. So I'm actually going to source an article from Variety, which I didn't think I would do on a video game podcast, written by Rebecca Rubin, and we'll read. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is officially the first film of the year to cross the coveted $1 billion milestone at the global box office as of Sunday. So that would be May 1st. After 26 days of release, the animated video game adaptation from Universal, Illumination, and Nintendo has grossed $490 million in North America and $532 million internationally. It's only the fifth movie of pandemic times to join the $1 billion club, including Spider-Man No Way Home, Top Gun Maverick, Jurassic World Domination, and Avatar The Way of Water. The Super Mario Bros. Movie opened in theaters April 5th and generated a towering $204 million in its first 5 days of release, notching the biggest opening weekend of the year and the second biggest debut ever for an animated movie. Since then, it has become the highest-grossing movie domestically and globally of 2023, as well as the highest grosser ever for a film based on a video game. These records are especially encouraging because the last time Mario and Luigi graced the big screen, it was in 1993's disastrous live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie. It became a legendary example of Hollywood's inability to adapt video games. So there you have it. If you haven't seen the Mario movie yet, I highly recommend that as well. It's fantastic. I wanted to go back and see it a second time before it leaves theaters, so that will still be yet to be determined if I have the time to do that. But yeah, $1 billion. There you go. I think that implies a sequel will probably be in the works. Nothing officially announced yet, but it's safe to say so. When movies do this, when they make this kind of money, I think Penguin told me this is the Iron Man of the video game universe, right? What Iron Man did for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, bringing superheroes into mainstream. This is the movie. This is the catalyst, the Mario Bros. Movie. This is how you do it. This is the formula that everyone will copy to bring video games to the big screen in such a way that is mainstream and profitable and high quality, and it does well and respects the content. I know we have other examples that are we're getting here. Of course, The Last of Us show on HBO nailed what The Last of Us can do, so that's another example. And then we have the Uncharted movie, which is kind of the summer blockbuster version of what you can do with video games. So you have 3 solid examples that were all extremely successful. They made money, and that is a great segue into my next topic, which is the next video game movie, I believe, on the horizon, and that is the Gran Turismo movie. And that trailer hit this week. So I'm actually going to quote an article from The Verge written by Charles Pelliam-Moore about the Gran Turismo movie trailer. Gran Turismo's first trailer makes it seem like the movie hates gamers is the headline. I disagree with that headline entirely, but I'll read what it has to say. So if you haven't seen the trailer, go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's 2 minutes and some change or whatever. Maybe it's 4 minutes. I don't know. It's not a whole lot of time. Go do it because it looks awesome. All right, there have been a number of video games that made for fantastic cinematic adaptations, but everything about the first trailer for Sony's upcoming Gran Turismo film from director Neil Blomkamp makes the movie seem like a showcase of reasons why racing sims don't need to be turned into movies. Caught somewhere between being a video game adaptation and a coming-of-age narrative, Gran Turismo tells the true story of how a teenage Gran Turismo player, Jan Mardenborough, played by Archie Madekwe, actually became a professional race car driver after winning a series of driving game competitions. The trailer introduces Jan pre-fame while he's still living at home with his father Steve and his mother Leslie and spending more time than his parents would like gaming with his friends. Though Jan can feel how he might be able to parlay his virtual driving into the real thing, his working class folks insist that he's got his head in the clouds. But when Jan decides to enter the GT Academy competition, it isn't long before motorsport executive Danny Moore, played by Orlando Bloom, takes note of the boy's talent and links him up with trainer Jack Salter, played by David Harbour from Stranger Things. Of course, he is Harper. So While the trailer definitely sells Gran Turismo's ability to showcase actual cars racing in a way that's cool, it highlights what it feels like this is the article's opinion, and I'm disagreeing with. So I'm sourcing an article I actually completely disagree with. It highlights what feels like a very thin plot consisting of people dunking on a kid for being into racing games before he proves his haters wrong by joining the big leagues. Gran Turismo may be based on a true story, but when the movie hits theaters August 11th, it's almost certainly going to stand out as an example of one of those video game movies people rag on for not feeling like something anyone asked for. No. This article is dunking on Gran Turismo. I am a Fast and Furious fan, so if that puts it into perspective for you, Gran Turismo looks just as good as Fast and Furious. It looks awesome. It is a coming-of-age story, the trailer indicates at least. I think it will potentially validate gamers, so it's the opposite. It's not how the movie hates the gamers. It's like taking gaming a little more seriously, especially esports competitions. This is a racing simulator. So a gamer who is ridiculously good at it, who entered competitions, who rose to the top, much like any other esport athlete at the top of their field, was able to translate the driving aspect to real life. And it happened. And he raced. And it was great. And people laughed and scoffed at it like, you can't learn from a video game. This movie captures that. That's exactly the point. I can't wait for this. I think it's going to be great. I always go back and say part of the reason I even started doing 80-Bit Pod Smash was because of the cultural relevancy of gaming becoming mainstream and how I want to talk to it, because I've been holding all this stuff in my whole life, and this is an outlet for me to be able to describe, discuss, and share my passion for video games and my lifelong experience with them and the meaningful journey that it's been with the stories you can get and the experiences you can have. And I feel like this movie, maybe I'm blowing this up a little too much, but I feel like this movie could kind of shed a little light on that. Like, gaming, you can take it seriously from a different perspective than just single-player free time. Like, this is actually someone making a career move out of this through competitions. So anyway, it looks awesome. Of course, I love cars. I love racing. I'm a NASCAR fan. I'd love to watch different types of racing. I just don't have enough time in my life. And NASCAR's been established in my life already, and I already know the sport inside and out and know the drivers. And so why would I jump into a different brand of racing? I don't know, but I love Fast and Furious movies. I love Gran Turismo. There have been some other car movies that I just love, like cheesy bad ones. Initial D is an amazing anime, so I'm just in. Like, I love this. I'm all here for it. I want to know what y'all think. Am I nuts? Am I hyping this up too much? Come August 11th, I'm going to go see this movie. I can't wait. Next up on the list is the big, meaty news bits that I will talk through, mostly regarding Microsoft, but there's a whole lot of news coming out of Microsoft Camp this week, and it all started with Redfall's review roundup. So I'm going to read some snippets of how Redfall reviewed. It did not review well. I also didn't play it myself, so everything I'm reading here is just other people's quotes. I wish I could have made the time to play it, but with the review scores being so low and my time being limited, the Splatoon 3 Splatfest and Jedi Survivor sounded way more fun than trying to make time for this, so I didn't. But here it is, review roundup for Redfall. Here's what the critics are saying about Arcane Austin's newest game, written by Eddie McCook over at GameSpot. Arcane Austin's latest game, Redfall, is out now on Xbox and PC after years of development and one high-profile delay. Originally set to launch in 2022, it's finally here, taking players to a fictional Massachusetts town overrun by vampires and a shooter for 1 to 4 players. But what do critics think? Reviews for the game are generally not painting the rosiest picture. GameSpot's Redfall review scored the game a 4 out of 10, with reviewer Mark Delaney calling the game a bloody mess. IGN's review in progress for the always online game had the reviewer feeling, quote, thoroughly underwhelmed by Redfall's vanilla missions and lifeless world and very disappointed at its lengthy list of display issues and bugs. Redfall was developed by Arcane Austin, which previously made 2017's Prey. Arcane Lion, meanwhile, developed the much-celebrated Deathloop and Dishonored 2. A PS5 edition of Redfall was apparently in the works until Microsoft bought Arcane owner ZeniMax. Redfall is the first title from Microsoft to launch at $70, a $10 price increase that the company warned in 2022 was coming. Starfield will also launch at $70 later this year. Redfall is available to buy outright on Xbox and PC, but it's also available through Game Pass if you're a member. You can see more review scores for Redfall below. For more on the critical reaction to Redfall, head to GameSpot, sister site Metacritic. So the game was reviewed 4 out of 10 at GameSpot. We've got this covered, was 4.5 out of 5, which is actually a good one. Windows Central was 3 out of 5. Xbox Era 8.5 out of 10. And it currently sits at a 60 on OpenCritic. And why do I care about OpenCritic? Because one, it's critic reviews only. There's no user scores whatsoever. And two, it's on what Fantasy Critic uses as their scoring medium. And I have put Redfall on my fantasy lists for this year because I had high hopes for Arcane Austin and how they did Prey and how long the game has been in development. And Microsoft money I thought would have improved the quality, but it didn't. So I'm negative 10 points on that with its 60 on OpenCritic. So not a good look. The context here is kind of sort of painted in the article I just read, where they haven't come out with a game since 2017. It was promised to be on PlayStation 5 when Redfall was announced, and then Microsoft acquired ZeniMax, which came with id Studio, Arcane, of course, Arcane, both Austin and Lion. Sorry, Arcane Lion and Arcane Austin. Bethesda, all of that stuff was all kind of under ZeniMax and more. So when that happened, famously the PS5 version of Redfall was canceled, and we haven't really gotten a lot of quality games out of Microsoft in a while. I mean, 2022 was pretty much a dead year, and for 2023, the only first-party game that made any waves was Hi-Fi Rush. Here we are sitting in May with this game and Starfield in the works, and Forza, of course. Minecraft Legends had just come out, but that wasn't as big a hit, at least for Xbox fans in the big giant echo chamber of the video game industry. So anyway, I'm just painting a picture here. Like, Microsoft's already kind of on the ropes with this generation. Like, PlayStation 5 is hitting with great games, great titles, and a regular release schedule. Like, we're fed. Whereas Microsoft is not. There's still like a case for Game Pass. There's a whole and I'm not part of this view, but there's a whole view that Game Pass is just full of mediocre games, and then Microsoft's first party passed, and that's it. And so there's an idiom that's like, oh, that's a Game Pass game. That's a Game Pass game. That's a mid game. Where you get that for free because it's not worth money or time, so we'll just put it on Game Pass. Like, there's a whole moniker and a whole air of reputation around that, and that sucks for people who are into Microsoft, right? Like, that's not good. So there was a lot of hope, a lot of hype, a lot resting on Redfall, more than just like another game from Arcane or another game on Game Pass. Like, this was supposed to be something good, and this was supposed to hit and be awesome for Microsoft, for Xbox, the brand, to show what Microsoft went on this massive hiring spree, acquiring studios, right? They have like 20 studios in-house now, and not a whole lot of games to show for it. We always go down the list, right? It's Perfect Dark's remake, it's Hellblade's sequel, it's Avowed, it's I don't even know, and just throwing titles up off the list, but whatever In Exile is working on, whatever is next for Forza Horizon. We have Forza Motorsport, of course, the Fable remake, and Rare's game, Everwild. We don't know much about that. So there's just a whole bunch of studios working on stuff Microsoft's not producing, and here comes Redfall. We're like, all right, here we go. We're going in, like, this is the year, right? We got Starfield later, Forza later, this, Minecraft Legends, Hellblade sequel, all coming out this year. It's going to be great. And no, it flopped. So, yeah, that's not a good look. But with it, Phil Spencer had this amazing interview with the Kinda Funny crew. So you can go check that out. It's one of their things on YouTube at youtube.com/kindafunnygames. And I did listen to that whole interview, and wow. If you don't know anything about Phil Spencer, you know, he's a video game head. He's analogous to Doug Bowser for Nintendo and Jim Ryan for PlayStation. He's the head of Xbox, right? And I've always been a Phil Spencer fan. This guy's awesome. He shows up. He's willing to talk about hard things. He's honest. He's transparent, but he's also a businessman. And of course, he's going to have the PR spin on stuff, but he's not as PR as Jim Ryan or Doug Bowser. I mean, like, Nintendo is locked down. PlayStation, Jim Ryan is not a gamer. He is totally a businessman through and through. Where Phil Spencer is a gamer. He shows up at game fests, gamer fests. He's talking and hanging out with games. He plays video games, talks to gamers. He's making rounds on podcasts and like actually being a face for Xbox and the brand. And he talks the talk. Like, we know he plays games based on how he conveys the things he talks about, and he's just out there with it. He gets it. He gets us, right? So I love Phil Spencer. He's great. And there was a time, and this is actually highlighted in his interview, at the beginning of the pandemic, when it was announced or revealed that Halo Infinite was going to have to be delayed and it was not going to meet the launch for the new Series XS consoles, at the time that Gary Whitta, one of the writers for Rogue One, was doing an animal talking show, which is a talk show inside of Animal Crossing, which was awesome. And it was perfect for the pandemic when celebrities had nothing else to do because all their shows were canceled. Here comes Gary Whitta with this silly, like, in Animal Crossing studio. He would get these celebrities on Discord and interview them, and they would have the avatars act out like emotions and stuff in the game Animal Crossing and live stream it. And it was very successful. It was awesome. I was there for like almost every episode. I was enamored by Animal Crossing. It was perfect for this weird situation the world was in with the pandemic and the lockdowns and such. But Phil Spencer came on that show, and he, Gary Whitta, fully expected his interview to be canned. We can't do this. Bad news came out. Halo Infinite's not doing great. Xbox Series X console launch game is not going to happen. This is a high-profile thing. Phil Spencer came out, and he took the hard questions. He took it all on the chin, and he takes ownership for it. So, kind of funny did the same thing with Phil Spencer, and I highly recommend you go check it out because there's a whole lot of things that he does talk about, and I think I brought up an old... Yeah, I didn't mean to bring this article up. I wish there was like a good synopsis that I could read over about his comments on everything. The questions were great. They talked about Redfall and the review scores. They talked about the CMA, like most recently blocking the Activision Blizzard acquisition, and it's wild. So about Redfall. All right, so I'm going to read some snippets from a Windows Central article written by Jennifer Young. What you need to know. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer recently sat down with Kinda Funny XCast during the CMA ruling and Redfall release. During the interview, Spencer discussed his response to the community's disappointment in Redfall. Spencer stated that a delay in the game would not have had the impact on its reception fans were hoping for, and he stands by his philosophy of giving creative control to Xbox studios, but lessons have been learned. So he says the CMA decision was disappointing. We've been talking to that group for the coming upon a year. The cloud gaming market was the kind of highlight of that, if you remember. And Phil's talking about like they've defined a market of cloud gaming that in my mind doesn't really exist yet today, but they have a point of view that maybe we have a lead in a market that's just forming and that this content could somehow prohibit others from competing in that market. So apparently that's the basis for which Microsoft is going to appeal this decision is that the CMA doesn't really understand the cloud gaming market and falsely thinks and believes that Microsoft is at the spearhead of this. I kind of agree with that because I thought the cloud gaming thing, you can go back to Termite's Buzz. At the time, I was more convinced that, I guess with Microsoft's Azure supercomputing platform and the fact that they have more cloud computing products out there, they are currently not sitting at any higher stature other than Google Stadia crumbled, Amazon Luma still exists, and PlayStation still has its PlayStation Plus tiers that you can use. It used to be called PlayStation Now. They bought the Gaikai servers back on the PS4 era. And so getting more games on the already existing cloud services won't stop Sony from doing better or growing their cloud platform for their content. And it won't stop, Stadia's done. It won't stop Luma from Amazon from doing its cloud gaming situation, which seems to be more in line with how Epic Game Store is working. It's just getting like third-party releases kind of ported to that platform for cloud gaming in the PC space. So I don't really understand how so I'm kind of with Phil on this one. And it might sound like I'm just being a Phil Spencer apologist or a Microsoft apologist here, but I agree with him. And so if y'all feel like I'm just a Microsoft apologist here, I don't know what to tell you other than this is my opinion. Sure, you can take that if you want. So he also, Phil Spencer, super honest, super humble about everything. He just takes ownership and responsibility for it. He apologizes it for himself personally with Redfall. And so here's what he says, quote, "There's nothing that's more difficult for me than disappointing the Xbox community. I've been a part of this for a long time. Just to watch the community lose confidence and be disappointed, I'm disappointed. I'm upset with myself. It was kind of our punch in the chin, rightfully. about the 60 FPS stuff. And so Gary Whitta hit him with a great question about, you guys do internal review and like quality assurance. With big games like this, you bring in, like, you contract out reviewers, you do mock reviews, you do a whole play stand-up session before the game's release. Like, how did you not know this? And apparently, like, those review sessions and internal, like, whatever you want to call them, went really well. So obviously that process needs to change. So they were kind of surprised by the critic review scores. I don't know what they were expecting, but Phil Spencer, quote, "We will build games that review in the high 80s, and we will build games that review in the 60s. I mean, it's just kind of part of being in game publishing, and if you're afraid of that, then you shouldn't be in the entertainment business. You shouldn't be in the gaming business." And I kind of agree with that, because if you do take risks and you do favor your creative side, you're going to hit some low numbers, especially in the way the industry is, the way capitalism works, the way companies are. You know, we're always fighting against crunch, and we're always for unionization. I mean, there's a lot of struggles in getting games made, and they're extremely expensive now, and the expectations are always so high. So, you know, if you're in the business, it's like movies and TV shows and books. Like, if you're a consistent publisher and you're trying to be in the gaming space, it makes sense. You're going to have good ones and you're going to publish some bad ones. And it's those, and as another Gary Whitta quote about, like, you take the failures, learn from them, change your process, and grow and move on. Don't just sit and wallow and feel sorry for yourself. And in this situation, I feel like that's what Phil was trying to do, is all right, own it, like, right, and then answer to it, which is look at the process, look at what went wrong, and move on and move forward and try to create the next thing that's good. The interview's long. The articles that are coming out of it are all focusing on this. So I'm 40 some minutes into the show, and I didn't memorize this interview, and I also haven't watched or read a whole lot of processing from it. So I'm just giving you my takeaways here. So after that, it was awesome to hear Phil. Well, one thing he said was, every quarter this year was like a big Xbox hit. And so that was kind of a hint. Like, oh, okay. Well, we had the developer showcase earlier this year. So we know Minecraft Legends was one. And we know Redfall was another. And we know Forza's one, Hellblade, and Starfield. So that's 5 games, not including Hi-Fi Rush. And if you divide that out over the year, you can kind of surmise when certain titles may or may not, windows they may hit. So the next game to come out could be either Hellblade sequel or Forza, followed by Starfield, followed by the other one, whether it's Forza or Hellblade, whichever one's ready. And those will be the rest of the year. That's kind of cool. There was something that was really cool that I really liked that he said. That was, I thought it was really cool. Let me see if I can find some quotes here about that. Here we go. "We didn't do a good job early on in engaging with Arcane Austin to really help them understand what it means to be a part of Xbox. We did a better job with Starfield. Nobody should believe it until they're playing the game, but that game was earlier on in production, and it was easier for us." And what he's talking about was acquiring the studio, like acquiring ZeniMax. So, one, the fact that he said multiple times during that interview to not believe what he says about Starfield until you have a controller in your hand. So he's reiterating what everyone's already thinking, and he's trying to be transparent. He's trying to not spin up like, okay, Mr. PR guy. He's honestly like giving us that bone as gamers. Like, don't believe what I'm telling you, because I'm just a head of PR or a head of Xbox doing PR work. Like, I'm saying things through a PR grid. So don't listen to him. Don't take it seriously until you have the controller in your hand. But then he tells you a fact, and so it kind of raises a little bit of trust. You're like, okay, well, you know, if you're going to critique what you're about to say and then, you know, wait. I like that. I just thought it was cool. A little bit of humble pie. Don't trust what he says until you have the controller in his hand. But when that acquisition had happened, Arcane Austin had already promised a PlayStation release of Redfall. In fact, Deathloop was about to come out, and that was obviously third party. And so was Ghostwire Tokyo. Other games out of the Bethesda camp were already being made and in process. And so Phil Spencer talks about initially when that acquisition had happened, how he wants to give all the studios under that umbrella their complete creative freedom. He doesn't want to be the new boss in town, coming in and changing up all the stuff and forcing everyone to do things differently. And so I actually see that through line in this communication. when he says we didn't do a good job early on in engaging with Arcane Austin to really help them understand what it meant to be a part of Xbox. So what that tells me, he was a man of his word. They acquired the studio and said, have at it, go make your game, don't let us interfere, and here's a bunch of money, right? You're funded, so go make this game. And by the way, can the PlayStation version and focus on just Xbox and PC, which they're all the same architecture anyway, so you just optimize for those platforms and move on. And that's it. So we got that. We got that from Phil. That's what he said he was going to do, right? So it's interesting with Starfield, and what he alluded more in this interview. This is really cool to me. This is what I took out of the interview probably the most, more than all the other things going on, was how he failed to give the studio the resources that Microsoft has. And that, when I go back, when we had many talks and many discussions in the past when that acquisition happened, and it was like, it's neat to think that you could have like different types of games coming from with the help of other genres. And so like you think of id and their ability to make an amazing shooter paired up with Obsidian, who can make an awesome RPG. And like maybe there's some new IP that Microsoft could kind of push utilizing the resources of both of those studios and their strengths. And there was a whole like fantasy, like, oh my gosh, this could be really cool, and a lot of creative endeavors. And so that is what Phil is kind of fessing up to here. With Bethesda and Starfield, they were able to get in there and engage at an earlier phase in Starfield's development cycle to influence, help, aid, and give them the support that they need, versus Arcane, or now for the 60 FPS mode. The 60 FPS, he said there is a timeline for it, there is a plan, and they're pulling developers from other studios within the Xbox camp to help them fix it, which I thought was really cool, because the game Redfall is made in Unreal Engine, and there are other studios who are more experienced working with Unreal, and so they're pulling in developers from those other studios to make Redfall better. That's what should have happened earlier on. They acknowledged Phil acknowledged that in this whole thing. So I thought it was really fascinating. I thought it was really cool. And I left the interview. I mean, Phil was obviously down. He was not the hype man that you see him usually, so he was bummed, clearly, and stressed out, I'm sure, as the CEO of Xbox, about all this bad news coming out. But it was really cool to just see the humility and the accepting of the problem and not blaming anyone else, not pointing the fingers, unlike some of the PlayStation developers who on Twitter would rant about, like, people don't know good games and whatnot. Phil definitely not doing that. So I continue to stand by Phil Spencer. I think he's a great guy for the job. He also iterated in his interview that you can't compete with PlayStation and Nintendo directly. It's a fool's errand to do so. He even said, like, if Starfield is an 11 out of 10, it's not going to force anyone to sell their PlayStations and go buy an Xbox. He's like, that's just not the reality. And so he acknowledges that. I mean, that's very true. One thing I do disagree with, Phil, was he was saying something along the lines of great games. It's not always about great games. Like, people aren't going to move over to Xbox if they consistently publish great games. And I don't know what he was intending to mean when he said that, other than, like, maybe you have to just compete in your own way, like Nintendo has done forever and Sony has done. And, like, so if you look at the three camps, you can see how each of them are unique and they don't compete with each other. And Phil's probably talking about that with the context of the interview. Likely that's what he's saying. But the name of the game is the game. Like, if you ever want anyone to buy a hardware platform or to jump onto your ecosystem or your subscription model, you got to have the content. The same goes for Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max. Like, you got to have the shows. If you don't have the stuff that people want to watch, you're not going to get any subscriptions. You're not going to get anything. So it's all about the games. That's all it is. PlayStation VR 2 is not going to be successful without games. Like, give us the games and the hardware will sell. That's what PlayStation and Nintendo have done. And yeah, Nintendo might have, like, hardware portability in mind, or motion controls, and the things they've done in the past with the Wii, the Wii U, and the Switch. Because when Nintendo did compete directly with PlayStation on both the N64 and the GameCube, the sales dropped. Going from the highest, which was Nintendo, to Super Nintendo, which sold slightly less than the Nintendo, the N64 sold less, and the GameCube even less. So if they didn't reinvent, do something different, they were on a trend that was not good. They did really, really well in the handheld space. The Game Boy and the DS are still some of the highest grossing consoles or highest sold consoles of all time, because that's unique. Sony failed right? With the Vita and the PSP, they could not compete directly. So when you see these companies compete with each other directly, it doesn't work. They have to go out and do their own thing and innovate. But regardless of what they're doing, the games defined everything. The Vita would still be viable today if Sony continued to support it. And we saw, to frustration, because the Vita is an amazing PlayStation console, to the frustration of us PlayStation fans, the studios stopped putting good games on it. Why? There's a whole reason there. I'm not going to go into it, but Nintendo continuously supports all of their hardware with amazing first-party titles. Even the Wii U, as a flop as it was, still has awesome games, so much that they ported them all to the Switch. Almost all of them. Still trying to hold out for that Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD bundle on the Switch. Come on, Nintendo, where's it at? So I'm saying, I disagree with Phil in that comment. Go listen to his interview first. If you don't just take my word for it, go listen to what he had to say, and then come listen to my rant about this whole thing. But Phil's awesome. I love it. He's great. I think he did a great job. In that interview, he answered tough questions. Kind of funny. Did an amazing job at crafting the questions and asking the hard ones and responding to Phil's answers with even more critical analysis and diving deeper. So go check it out. It really is raw. It's awesome. It's a really cool inside look at stuff that is generally hidden behind PR curtains, and we're just fed whatever, and we don't really trust it. And I think that's it. I'm going to leave that there. And my last story is back to Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom regarding that launch coming May 12th. There's a live stream coming on May 11th. That's what I was getting at 6:45 Pacific, so 9:45 Eastern if you're on the East Coast with me. They're doing a Nintendo Treehouse live presentation featuring gameplay from Tears of the Kingdom. And then following that, there's a live stream content counting down to the release of Tears of the Kingdom. New York City is doing a huge release. There was a whole pre-order sign-up page for folks to be in line at New York City to get the first copies. So I think there'll be some content there. I pre-ordered mine. What did I pre-order my game through? I got to search because I have a note in my game pre-orders. I have it pre-ordered through Best Buy, so I'll be picking it up at 10 o'clock on the morning of. They don't do midnight releases, but I do have a collector's edition pre-ordered through Amazon, and that's not supposed to come in until the 16th or something stupid. But I have the Amiibo as well pre-ordered, so both the Amiibo and Tears of the Kingdom will be available at Best Buy. For me, on release day, I will not be doing a midnight release, so I will likely be watching some of the live content here, the Treehouse, the Nintendo Treehouse live stream, and then the New York City launch event. Sounds like fun. I doubt I'll stay up till midnight because the working parent of 2 children. I will need to get sleep so I can get up early on Friday morning and get a long run in. I'm training for runs. I'm training for the Marine Corps half, so I need to get my last long run in before the race. Friday morning before Best Buy even opens, and then head straight to Best Buy, pick up Zelda, and then go home and play it all day and eat, because whenever I run long, I get rungry, and it's fun. Good fun day. That, I believe, is the show for the news. So with retro gaming, not much has changed in what I'm playing. Still continuing to be PlayStation 3 obsessed. The Frankenstein PlayStation 3 is going strong. I'm still working my way through Grand Theft Auto 4. I'm 15 hours into it. If you think about the 5 to 10 hours I put into the original Dead Space on the Frankenstein, I've now put about 20 hours of console gaming on the Frankenstein, and it's flawless. Not a hiccup, not a missing pixel, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It is running exactly as the PlayStation 3 should, and that's using Wi-Fi, USB ports, PlayStation Network synchronization. I'm online getting trophies, so you can check my PSN profiles to prove it. So I'm loving the PlayStation 3. Absolutely awesome. So I'm doing that. But I do want to talk briefly about a little dip I took into Donkey Kong Country 2 because I wanted to see what it looked like on the OLED screen through the Nintendo Switch Online service that you get with that subscription. And I was just really taken aback by the music again. Occasionally I just get hit with a little bump of nostalgia, and I'll go YouTube the soundtrack for Donkey Kong Country 2. But what a banger of a track. Oh my gosh, just the main menu, into the world map, into an actual level. It's all so, it just hits. It always is so good. So I love Donkey Kong Country 2 in general because the platforming and level design was just next level. especially like the new thing that happened with Donkey Kong Country 1 was like the level of sprite detail and animation quality that the Super Nintendo was able to show, which was awesome, next level, like really competing against Sega. And then the detail there was great. Well, Donkey Kong Country 2 like continues to further that more with like water effects, lava effects, what's called like parallax, where the background moves at a different rate than the foreground, which creates a 3D illusion. Nails all of that. In addition to this soundtrack, which is, it could be the best soundtrack of any video game ever. Like, it really is absolutely amazing. So anyway, I took a little dip into Donkey Kong Country 2, played a couple levels, had a good time. Wanted to share that here. PlayStation 3, the Frankenstein mod, fantastic. If you care at all about it, on those socials over at 80bitpodsmash.com, I've got links to Computer Booter, who did the work. He live streamed the repair. You can see more details about what I'm even talking about, what is a Frankenstein. It's grafting a processor from a newer PlayStation 3 onto the original model, so I have a backwards compatible one that is in full working order. That's what that is, and that is that. So there may not be a Termite's Buzz next week because I will be playing Zelda. I'm just kidding. There will always be a Termite's Buzz, I hope. I don't know. We'll see. You know, if it comes out that I cancel, I'll let everyone know if I skip an episode on all of our social media platforms, so make sure that you are up to date everywhere that I am, and that link tree is still sitting at 80bitpodsmash.com. And I will have hopefully another episode for you come Monday, May 11th. That doesn't make any sense. That's not right at all. When's the next Monday? Come on. The 14th? Nope, 15th. Wow. Who can do math? May 15th. I'm fried, y'all. It's been a week. It's been a good show. I've had a great discussion with you. I hope to hear your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and ideas. Your feedback is always welcome, good or bad. Tell me more about what you're thinking of all of this, especially the Phil Spencer Microsoft stuff. There's so much to digest there, so much to talk about that I just barely got to the surface. So let me know what you think. And I will, as always, see you next week.